Pushy, one of the hottest rappers to come out of Memphis over the last 5 years, is reportedly in critical condition after allegedly getting jumped by Crips inside a federal prison. And bro, this story goes way deeper than just a prison fight. Because this wasn't some random little altercation. This is about loyalty, street politics, and what really happens when a famous rapper gets locked inside a federal facility thinking their name alone is enough to protect them. Spoiler alert, it's not. So buckle up, gang, because by the end of this video, you're gonna understand exactly what allegedly happened to Pooh Shiesty, why it happened, and why this whole situation is honestly one of the wildest stories to hit the rap world this year. Let's get into it. But before we go all the way in, let me paint the picture real quick, because some of y'all might not fully know who Pooh Shiesty is or why this story is such a huge deal. And trust me, once I lay the groundwork, everything else is gonna hit way harder. So lock in, because I'm not repeating myself. Pooh Shiesty, real name Lantrell Donnell Williams Jr., is a rapper from Memphis, Tennessee. Born November 8th, 2000. This dude was only 20 years old when he exploded onto the scene. Most people at 20 are trying to figure out rent money or what they're eating that night, and this man was already going platinum. He signed to 1,017 records under Gucci Mane and came into the game swinging hard. His debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, dropped in January 2021, and bro, that project was a monster. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, number 4 with a mixtape, not even a full studio album. Then he dropped Back in Blood with Lil Durk, and the song went multi-platinum. Dude was on fire. And then just like that, everything came crashing down. So peep this. In October 2021, Pooh Shiesty pleaded guilty to a federal conspiracy to commit robbery charge. The case came from a 2020 incident where Pooh Shiesty and some associates allegedly robbed 2 men at a hotel in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. During that robbery, one of the victims was reportedly shot. Now, I'm not here making jokes about that because somebody got hurt and that's serious. But the situation was big enough for the feds to get involved, and once the federal system steps in, you already know things get real fast. In August 2022, Pooh Shiesty was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. And in the federal system, inmates usually serve around 85% of their sentence, with very little flexibility compared to state prison. So, we're talking about him doing most of that time. He ended up in a low-security federal correctional institution, which at first sounded like, okay, maybe it won't be too crazy, right? At least it's not maximum security. Nah, y'all are not ready for what happened next. Okay, so this is where the story starts getting seriously dark. And I really need y'all paying attention here, because this is where it stops being rapper goes to jail and turns into something genuinely disturbing. Reports started surfacing that Pooh Shiesty was allegedly having a rough time inside prison. And yeah, obviously prison isn't supposed to be fun for anybody, but this situation allegedly went way beyond that. Because Pooh Shiesty is famous. Millions of followers, platinum records, money. On the outside, people might assume having that kind of status would earn you protection inside, right? Like people know your music, maybe they respect you, maybe they give you a pass. Nope, that's not how federal prison works at all. Inside federal prison, especially in the type of system Pooh Shiesty is navigating, your outside fame means almost nothing. What matters is where you're from, who you're tied to, what affiliations you have, and whether or not you can stand your ground when situations get physical. Street politics do not disappear because somebody sold records. If anything, fame can actually put a bigger target on your back, because now you're somebody people want to test. You become a trophy. And that's a dangerous place to be. Now let me break down the incident everybody's talking about, because there's been a lot of rumors floating around online. According to multiple reports, Pooh Shiesty was allegedly involved in a serious altercation inside the federal facility where he's currently being held. And this reportedly wasn't just a quick one-on-one fight in the yard. Reports claim it was a coordinated jump involving multiple attackers allegedly affiliated with the Crips. And during that altercation, Pooh Shiesty reportedly suffered major injuries, including, and this is the detail that went viral online, allegedly having a tooth knocked completely out. Bro, a whole tooth. Now look, I know the internet turned it into jokes immediately, because that's what social media does. But when you really think about what that means, that level of violence is serious. You don't lose a tooth from a weak punch. That takes real force. Real blunt trauma to the face, which means Pooh Shiesty reportedly took significant damage during that fight. And the reports claiming he was in critical condition, the same reports that made this story explode online, suggest the injuries may have gone beyond just the missing tooth. We're talking about a situation serious enough for people to genuinely fear for his safety. That's actually insane when you stop and think about it. But before we get into why this allegedly happened, y'all need to understand prison gang politics, because without that context, none of this fully makes sense. And this is where things get really deep. So, Pooh Shiesty is from Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis has its own unique gang culture that's very different from places like Los Angeles or Chicago. A lot of Memphis street culture developed independently through local sets and homegrown affiliations. And this part is important. When Memphis rappers blow up nationally, people start associating them with certain gangs or affiliations, whether they openly claim them or not. Now, Pooh Shiesty has publicly been linked to blood-affiliated circles through people around him and certain affiliations connected to his camp. But federal prison is a whole different world, because you're locked up with people from everywhere. Compton, South Central, Chicago, New York. Everybody brings their politics inside with them. So when a high-profile rapper associated with blood-affiliated circles enters a facility with a strong Crip presence, that creates tension immediately. That's why people are saying this situation allegedly wasn't random at all. In prison politics, situations like this can almost feel inevitable. The streets don't magically stay outside once those prison doors close. Y'all, seeing how deep this really goes? And then there's another question everybody keeps asking. Why doesn't Pooh Shiesty just go into PC? For people who don't know, PC means protective custody. Basically, separate housing away from the general population for inmates considered at risk. On paper, that sounds like the obvious move, right? Famous rapper in danger? Just separate him and keep him safe? But here's the problem. In prison culture, going into PC carries a huge stigma. Huge. Inside prison, requesting protective custody is often viewed as admitting you can't survive in general population. People see it as weakness, and once somebody gets labeled as having checked in, that reputation can follow them even after release. On the streets, people will talk. They'll say you couldn't hold your own. And for somebody like Pooh Shiesty, whose entire image has been built around authenticity, toughness, and being solid, that creates an impossible situation. His music, his brand, his persona, all of it is tied to that image. In street culture and prison culture, those worlds overlap more than outsiders realize. Decisions made inside absolutely affect credibility outside. So now he's stuck in this brutal position. Ask for protection and risk damaging your reputation and career. Don't ask for protection and remain in an environment where serious violence can allegedly happen again. Bro, that's genuinely one of the craziest dilemmas to even think about. Now, let's talk about what day-to-day life in federal prison is probably really like for Pooh Shiesty, because I think people have this Hollywood fantasy about celebrity inmates. The reality is way different. First off, he doesn't have some luxury setup. He doesn't get special meals or a fancy private cell because he's famous. In a low-security federal facility, most inmates live in dorm-style housing, open bays, multiple people everywhere, almost no privacy. You're constantly surrounded by people from different regions, backgrounds, and affiliations. Now, yeah, fame might help in certain situations. Some inmates know your music, some people might respect what you accomplished. But fame can also make people want to test you. Some want to see if your image matches reality. Others might try to take advantage of you just because you're somebody important. And then, there's the money factor. Everybody knows Pooh Shiesty has money outside prison. Even if he can't directly access it inside, people understand somebody famous can have commissary money put on their books. And that creates another type of danger. Because now people may allegedly try to extort you. Run that commissary or else. And if somebody refuses, situations can allegedly escalate into violence fast. So weirdly enough, being rich and famous in prison might actually make life more dangerous instead of easier. That's the part that really blows people's minds. And let's not ignore the mental side of this either, because people overlook that constantly when talking about incarcerated artists. What allegedly happened to Pooh Shiesty physically is serious, no doubt. But mentally? Think about this. This is a young man who went from being one of the hottest rappers in the country, performing, traveling, recording, living the rap star lifestyle, to sitting inside a federal correctional institution while the music industry keeps moving without him. New artists are blowing up. Other rappers from his era are still dropping projects and going on tour. And he has to watch all of that from behind bars, with limited communication and no way to participate. That kind of psychological pressure is brutal in ways most people can't fully understand. And now add physical violence on top of that. Add the constant tension, the fear, the awareness that danger could pop off at any moment. Add the reality that guards can't be everywhere all the time. Because that's another thing about federal prison, the staff to inmate ratio is not great. When fights break out in dorms or yards, situations can escalate before officers even reach the scene. This is where it stops feeling like entertainment and starts feeling very real. Because at the end of the day, this is still a human being allegedly caught in a genuinely dangerous environment. So what's being done about it? What is the Bureau of Prisons actually doing to keep Pooh Shiesty safe? That's the question his legal team and family are probably asking right now. And honestly, it deserves answers. But here's the frustrating reality. The Bureau of Prisons is extremely secretive about incidents inside federal facilities. They're not rushing to hold press conferences every time an inmate gets attacked. Most information leaks out through inmates, family members, lawyers, or phone calls pieced together over time. What we do know is that when a serious incident happens, something reportedly severe enough to leave somebody in critical condition, there are supposed to be procedures, medical evaluations, documentation, investigations. The injured inmate is supposed to receive treatment, and the people responsible are supposed to face consequences. But this is where the system often fails, whether the inmate is famous or completely unknown. Because even after violent incidents happen, the response inside prison can allegedly be slow, inconsistent, and ineffective at addressing the actual root of the problem. You can investigate a fight all day long, but if the same tensions still exist, if the same gang politics remain active, if the same people stay in the same environment, then the conditions for another attack are still there. And honestly, that's the scariest part about this whole situation. Because if Pooh Shiesty refuses protective custody, and if prison officials don't seriously address his safety concerns, then people are left wondering, not if something else could happen, but when. And now there are people online saying stuff like, he chose that life, or he knew what came with it when you live that kind of lifestyle. And look, I understand why people say that. The decisions Pooh Shiesty made that landed him in federal prison are not really up for debate. He pleaded guilty. He admitted his role. That part is clear. But here's the thing I really need y'all to hear, because this part matters. Somebody making mistakes and serving time for them does not automatically mean they deserve to get brutally beaten, lose teeth, or end up reportedly fighting for their health inside a prison facility. The legal system sentenced Pooh Shiesty to prison time. It did not sentence him to getting jumped by multiple people and allegedly left in critical condition. Those are two completely different things. And honestly, this situation goes beyond just Pooh Shiesty. This story gives people a real glimpse into what life can actually look like inside American federal prisons. The gang politics, the violence, the impossible choice between protecting your safety or protecting your reputation. The way the system is built in a way that often creates more conflict instead of rehabilitation. And the craziest part? This isn't only happening to famous rappers. Thousands of inmates across the country are dealing with similar conditions every day. People whose names never trend online. People without fan bases or blogs reporting on their stories. That's something worth really sitting with for a second. What if I told y'all the same conditions that allegedly led to what happened to Pooh Shiesty are conditions thousands of incarcerated people are navigating right now across America? That's heavy when you really think about it. Now let me rewind for a second, because there's another layer to this people keep bringing up online. A lot of folks have been talking about the pressure Pooh Shiesty may have faced, specifically because of his profile, his ties to 1017 Records, and his connection to Gucci Mane. People expected him to move a certain way inside prison. On one side, you've got fans and supporters who expect him to stay solid, stand tall, never fold, never check in. Basically carry the same image in prison that he carried in his music. But on the other side, you've got people who allegedly want to test that exact image. People who want to see if the real-life Pooh Shiesty matches the rapper they heard on records. And in prison, people don't test you with conversations. They test you physically. So now imagine walking into that environment with pressure coming from every direction at once. That's an impossible situation for almost anybody, especially a young guy barely into his 20s trying to survive inside one of the toughest systems in the country. And keep this in mind too, Gucci Mane himself did federal time. Gucci already knows exactly how brutal that world can get. And even with all his status, reputation, and respect, prison still came with serious struggles. That environment is not a game at all. But here's another angle nobody's really talking about enough, and honestly, it might be the most interesting piece of this whole story. What happens to Pooh Shiesty's career after this? Because even while he's locked up, his music is still active. Fans are still streaming him. His songs are still hitting playlists. Royalties are still coming in. His name still has weight in the culture. And hip-hop has a long history of artists whose popularity actually grew while they were incarcerated. Sometimes prison almost becomes part of the mythology around an artist. Some of the biggest comeback moments in rap history came from artists dropping their first project after release. But here's the catch. That only works if the artist makes it home healthy. That only works if they come out physically and mentally intact enough to continue where they left off. And every violent incident, like the one reportedly involving Pooh Shiesty, creates more uncertainty around what condition he'll actually be in when he eventually walks out. And that's not just a business conversation anymore. That's a human conversation. Will he come home the same person who went in, just older and with time served? Or will this leave permanent marks on him mentally and physically that follow him for the rest of his life? That's the part of this whole story that really hits different. Now let's talk about the tooth situation, specifically for a second, because as brutal as that detail sounds, it actually tells you a lot about how violent this alleged attack was. When somebody gets a tooth knocked out during a fight, that usually means it wasn't some simple one-on-one fade where two people squared up fairly. Losing a tooth often points to repeated shots, multiple angles, getting hit while overwhelmed, or getting attacked while unable to properly defend yourself. And remember, reports claim this was a coordinated jump involving multiple attackers. That's not a fair fight. That's a group making a collective decision to target one person. And when you're outnumbered in an environment like prison, where staff may not instantly intervene, your options become extremely limited very fast. You can fight back all you want, but numbers matter. And this right here is why prison reform advocates constantly talk about better staffing, stronger monitoring, and faster intervention inside these facilities. Because situations like this don't happen instantly. People allegedly coordinated this. People moved together. And the fact that it escalated to the point of somebody reportedly ending up in critical condition with serious injuries suggests the system may have failed to stop something that potentially could have been prevented. That's crazy when you really break it all down. And there's another important thing people need to understand here too. Information coming out of prisons, especially involving celebrities, is complicated. On one hand, facts are difficult to verify because prisons are closed environments. Communication is limited. A lot of information comes secondhand or thirdhand, and rumors can absolutely get exaggerated online. Sometimes stories even get completely fabricated for clout. So when looking at reports surrounding Pooh Shiesty, people should still think critically. Now, the broad details that something serious reportedly happened, that there was allegedly a violent altercation involving gang-affiliated inmates, and that Pooh Shiesty suffered injuries, those details have remained fairly consistent across multiple reports. But exact specifics? How many people were involved? Every detail about the injuries, his precise medical condition, those details are harder to fully confirm with certainty right now. What I can say is, the story spread the way stories spread when there's usually real substance behind them. This wasn't just some random rumor from one blog that disappeared after a few hours. Multiple outlets picked it up. People connected to prison circles talked about it. People with histories of accurately reporting on incarcerated artists paid attention to it. So while everybody should always stay critical and avoid blindly believing every rumor online, this situation clearly has people genuinely concerned, especially people close to Pooh Shiesty and people tied to the Memphis rap scene. Nobody around him is brushing this off like it's fake internet gossip. That alone says a lot. So let's bring everything together for a second because I want y'all to really understand the full picture here. Pooh Shiesty is one of the most naturally talented young rappers Memphis has produced in years. His 2021 run was huge. The mixtape success, the features, the streaming numbers, the hype he had, the kind of breakout moment artists spend entire careers chasing. Then, a combination of decisions and circumstances landed him in federal prison at just 21 years old. And inside that prison, he's navigating one of the most dangerous social environments imaginable. Gang, politics, territorial issues, pressure from every direction, the impossible choice between personal safety and street credibility. The mental stress of watching the world move forward, while your life feels paused behind bars. And now, on top of all that, reports of a violent coordinated attack that allegedly left him critically injured and missing a tooth, an incident serious enough to become national news. People keep asking why he won't go into PC. But in the world he comes from, in the culture he represents, that move would completely damage his credibility. To many people, that's considered checking in. So instead, he stays in general population and takes the risk every single day. And that means every day inside that facility comes with potential danger. At the same time, the Federal Bureau of Prisons has a responsibility to protect the people in its custody, famous or not. Platinum plaques shouldn't matter. Every inmate is still entitled to basic physical safety. And if somebody ends up reportedly in critical condition after getting jumped inside a federal facility, that points to a serious failure somewhere in the system. Full stop. And honestly, when you step back and look at the entire story, this might be one of the most sobering situations to hit the rap world in a long time. Not in a sensational way, in a real human way. Before I wrap this up, I want to say one more thing, because it deserves to be said. There are a lot of people out there genuinely rooting for Pooh Shiesty right now. Fans, supporters, people from the culture, people from the same streets he came from, people who want to see him healthy, want to see him survive this situation, and want to see him eventually return to music, doing what he does best. And I think that matters, because it's easy for stories like this to become just another viral headline or internet discussion for a few days before everybody moves on to the next topic. But at the center of all this is a real person. Lantrell Donnell Williams Jr., a young man in his 20s, somebody's son, somebody's family member. A talented artist who made serious mistakes and is facing consequences for them, but who still deserves to safely serve his sentence without allegedly being beaten nearly to death. That shouldn't even be controversial to say. That's basic human dignity. And that's the full breakdown of the Pooh Shiesty situation. The reported jump, the injuries, the missing tooth, the prison politics, why he allegedly refuses PC, what day-to-day life may actually look like inside, and what this all could mean for one of Memphis's brightest young rap stars. But yo, if this video taught you something new or gave you a perspective you hadn't really thought about before, make sure you hit that like button, because it seriously helps the channel more than y'all realize. Drop a comment too. I want to know what y'all think about this whole situation. Are you worried about Pooh Shiesty? Do you think the Bureau of Prisons should be doing more? Let's really talk about it. And if you want more deep dives like this, real breakdowns, real context, no fluff, make sure you subscribe, because we're definitely not slowing down. We got more stories coming, and some of them are going to hit even harder than this one. I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.